Dr. Minji Park stepped off the transport shuttle and felt her stomach drop. Not from nerves, but from the strange gravity on the Vorthak research station. Everything around her looked like it was made of living crystal, walls that pulsed with soft blue light and floors that seemed to hum beneath her feet. She was the first human to ever set foot on an alien space station, and honestly, she had no idea what she was doing. The Vorthaks had been talking to Earth for about 2 years now, ever since they picked up our radio signals. They were curious about humans, especially after they learned we were biological creatures instead of energy beings like them. To the Vorthaks, the idea of needing physical matter to survive was absolutely wild. They literally ate sunlight and cosmic radiation. No joke. Commander Velthor glided toward her and Minji tried not to stare. The alien looked like a walking piece of smoky quartz about 8 feet tall, with light dancing inside its crystalline body. When it spoke, the words came from everywhere and nowhere at once, like the station itself was talking. "Welcome, Dr. Park. We have prepared suitable accommodations for your biological requirements," Velthor said, and Minji could hear something like excitement in its voice. "Your species fascinates us greatly." As they moved through the corridors, Minji noticed other Vorthaks stopping their work to stare at her. She felt like a zoo animal but tried to smile and wave. Some of them flickered brighter when she did this, which she hoped was a good sign. "We studied your Earth databases extensively," Velthor continued as they walked. "Your biological processes are most unusual. We find it difficult to understand how your species achieved intelligence while being dependent on consuming other organic matter." Minji laughed. "Well, we've got to eat something. Can't exactly snack on starlight like you guys." This seemed to confuse Velthor even more. The alien's crystalline form dimmed slightly, which Minji was learning meant it was thinking hard about something. They arrived at what would be her home for the next month. The quarters were sterile and white, like a hospital room, but spacious. Everything looked human-sized, which was thoughtful. Then Velthor showed her the kitchen, and Minji's jaw dropped. It was perfect. Every appliance, every tool, every detail was exactly right. There was a stove, refrigerator, microwave, coffee maker, even a rice cooker. The counter space was generous, the sink was the right height, and they'd even included a spice rack. It looked like someone had taken a picture of a model kitchen and built it from scratch. "This is incredible," Minji said, running her hand along the granite countertop. "How did you manage to get everything so accurate?" "We downloaded and analyzed 47,000 human-dwelling images from your global network," Velthor replied proudly. "However, we must confess our confusion. Why would an intelligent species require such an elaborate facility for basic sustenance? Our analysis suggests this room serves no logical purpose that could not be accomplished more efficiently." Minji opened the refrigerator and found it stocked with ingredients she'd requested weeks ago. Fresh vegetables, eggs, meat, dairy products, all perfectly preserved. The Vorthaks had clearly put enormous effort into understanding human needs, even if they didn't understand the why behind them. "You guys really went all out," she said, genuinely touched. "This must have cost a fortune to build and stock." "Cost is irrelevant for scientific advancement," Velthor replied. "We simply cannot comprehend why your species would voluntarily complicate the simple act of energy consumption. Our researchers theorize this elaborate ritual might be connected to your psychological development, perhaps a form of mental stimulation to compensate for biological limitations." Minji tried not to laugh. To the Vorthaks, cooking probably did look like the most unnecessarily complicated thing in the universe. They absorbed pure energy directly into their crystalline matrix. No muss, no fuss, no dishes to wash afterward. "I guess you'll find out tomorrow morning," she said. "I was planning to make breakfast. Nothing fancy, just some traditional Korean food." Velthor's form brightened with what Minji was learning to recognize as intense curiosity. "We will observe with great interest. Perhaps witnessing your sustenance rituals will help us understand this puzzling aspect of biological intelligence." As Velthor left her to settle in, Minji couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to put on the most important cooking show in human history. She just hoped she wouldn't accidentally start an interstellar incident with scrambled eggs. Minji woke up on her fourth day feeling homesick. The crystalline walls of her quarters were beautiful, sure, but they didn't feel like home. She missed her tiny apartment in Seoul, missed the smell of her neighbor's cooking drifting through the thin walls, missed the sound of traffic and people living their messy, complicated lives. She padded to the kitchen in her slippers, yawning and stretching. Coffee first, then food. That was the rule. But as she flipped on the lights, she noticed something odd. Little blue sensors in the corners of the room were blinking, and she could swear she heard a faint humming sound that hadn't been there before. "Good morning to you too," she muttered to the sensors, assuming the Vorthax were keeping tabs on her morning routine. She'd gotten used to being watched. When you're the only human in a galaxy full of crystal aliens, privacy becomes a luxury you learn to live without. She opened the refrigerator and pulled out ingredients for kimchi bakimbap, her comfort food since college. Leftover rice, kimchi that she'd brought from Earth in sealed containers, eggs, a bit of Spam, and some scallions. Simple, filling, and it would remind her of home. The moment she turned on the stove, alarms started going off. Not little beeps or chimes, but full-blown, ear-splitting sirens that echoed through the entire station. Red lights flashed in the corridors outside her quarters, and she could hear what sounded like running footsteps if crystalline beings could actually run. "What the hell?" Minji turned off the burner, and the alarm stopped immediately. She turned it back on. The sirens resumed, even louder this time. Through her quarters' communication system, she heard frantic voices speaking in the Vorthak language, their harmonic tones pitched high with what sounded suspiciously like panic. She caught a few words she'd learned: thermal anomaly, dangerous reaction, and something that roughly translated to catastrophic energy release. "Commander Velthor?" she called out, hoping the station's AI would relay her message. "Everything's fine in here. I'm just trying to cook breakfast." The alarm stopped, but she could still hear agitated conversations echoing through the station's crystal corridors. She decided to ignore the drama and continue cooking. How hard could it be to make fried rice without causing an interstellar incident? She heated oil in the pan and this time managed to do it without triggering the emergency systems. The oil shimmered and danced in the heat, ready for cooking. She added the rice and the kitchen filled with that beautiful sizzling sound that meant breakfast was officially underway. Apparently, that sizzling sound was the alien equivalent of nails on a chalkboard. She heard 3 distinct crashes from somewhere in the station, followed by what she was pretty sure were alien curse words. Through the walls, she could make out panicked voices reporting uncontrolled molecular breakdown and catastrophic protein disruption. "It's just rice, guys," she said to the sensors, stirring the pan with a wooden spoon. "People have been doing this for thousands of years." But as she added the kimchi, things got really interesting. The fermented cabbage hit the hot oil with an aggressive sizzle, releasing that distinctive tangy, spicy aroma that made her mouth water. It smelled like home, like her grandmother's kitchen, like everything good about human civilization. To the Vorthax, it apparently smelled like chemical warfare. The station's atmospheric systems kicked into overdrive, fans whirring and filters, working frantically to process what they clearly considered dangerous airborne contaminants. She could hear the ventilation system struggling, making sounds like a vacuum cleaner trying to suck up bowling balls. Her communication system crackled to life. "Dr. Park," came Commander Velthor's voice, tense with worry. "Our sensors are detecting the release of numerous unknown organic compounds in your vicinity. Are you experiencing a medical emergency?" "No, I'm making breakfast," Minji replied, cracking an egg into the pan. The protein sizzled and bubbled around the edges, white and golden and perfect. "This is completely normal human behavior." "Normal?" Velthor's voice climbed an octave. "You are deliberately creating molecular chaos and releasing toxic vapors into your breathing environment. Our atmospheric processors are operating at maximum capacity to prevent contamination of the station's air supply." Minji couldn't help but laugh as she stirred everything together, the rice taking on the red color of kimchi juice, the egg breaking into silky ribbons throughout the mixture. "It's called cooking, Commander. We've been doing it since we discovered fire. It's how we make food safe and delicious. Safe? The alien sounded genuinely horrified. Our instruments indicate you are subjecting organic matter to destructive thermal processes and creating numerous chemical compounds that do not exist in nature. Exactly, Minji said, adding a splash of sesame oil and watching it glisten in the pan. That's the whole point. Through the walls, she could hear more emergency meetings being called, more panicked researchers discussing the unprecedented crisis of a human preparing a simple breakfast. She was pretty sure she'd just become the most terrifying thing in the galaxy, armed with nothing more dangerous than leftover rice and fermented vegetables. In the main research chamber of the Vorthak, station chaos was spreading faster than spilled coffee. Lead scientist Mordan's crystalline form pulsed with urgent red light as he called an emergency meeting of the High Research Council. Around the circular chamber, dozens of Vorthak researchers materialized through quantum transmission, their crystal bodies flickering into existence like living holograms. Fellow researchers, Mordan's voice resonated through the chamber. We are witnessing what may be the most disturbing xenobiological event in recorded history. The gathered scientists dimmed their inner light, a sign of serious attention in Vorthak culture. On the massive holographic display at the center of the room, live footage from Minji's kitchen played like the galaxy's most terrifying horror movie. Observe, Mordan continued, manipulating the display to show Minji cracking an egg into the sizzling pan. The human subject is deliberately destroying perfectly organized protein structures. Note how she applies thermal energy to break down cellular integrity. Dr. Yunsei, a respected xenobiologist, flickered with confusion. Perhaps this is some form of medical treatment? Could the human be suffering from a condition that requires the consumption of damaged organic matter? That was my initial hypothesis, Mordan replied grimly. However, analysis of the subject's biometric data shows no signs of illness or distress. In fact, her dopamine and serotonin levels spike during these destruction rituals. She appears to derive pleasure from the process. A collective dimming swept through the assembled scientists. The idea that an intelligent being would enjoy destroying perfectly good organic matter was beyond their comprehension. To the Vorthaks, who absorbed pure energy in its most refined form, Minji's cooking looked like watching someone take apart a perfectly functioning computer, just for fun. Junior researcher. Talavin nervously brightened his core. Could this be evidence of severe psychological deterioration? Perhaps humans have reached a stage of evolutionary decline where they can no longer recognize proper sustenance. I fear it may be worse than that, interjected Dr. Hyuntel from the Xenopsychology department. She manipulated the display to show Minji stirring the kimchi fried rice, her face relaxed and content. Notice the subject's facial expressions and body language. She exhibits all the signs of satisfaction and competence. This suggests the behavior is not only deliberate, but practiced. The room fell silent except for the harmonic resonance of worried Vorthak thoughts. On screen, Minji began preparing coffee, grinding beans and setting up what looked to them like an elaborate chemical extraction apparatus. By the cosmic winds, whispered Dr. Quinvell, the station's expert on toxic compounds. She's initiating alkaloid extraction through heated solvent filtration. The display zoomed in on the coffee maker as hot water began dripping through the ground beans. To the Vorthaks, whose databases associated such processes with ancient chemical weapons development, this looked like watching someone casually prepare poison in their kitchen. This is unprecedented, Quinvell continued, his crystal form pulsing with alarm. Our historical archives show similar extraction techniques were used by extinct civilizations for warfare purposes. The human appears to be preparing to consume concentrated plant toxins. Mordan expanded the display to show chemical analysis data streaming from the kitchen's sensors. Notice the complexity of compounds being created through thermal breakdown. Hundreds of previously unknown chemical structures are forming in real time. The subject is essentially conducting uncontrolled chemistry experiments and then consuming the results. Dr. Behrun, who specialized in evolutionary biology, began flickering rapidly with excitement and horror. I'm developing a disturbing theory. What if this behavior isn't random? What if it's systematic self-destruction disguised as sustenance? Explain, Mordan commanded. Consider the evidence. Bayron projected his analysis onto auxiliary displays. Humans deliberately heat organic matter to temperatures that destroy cellular structure. They consume fermented materials that our instruments classify as decomposed matter. They extract and ingest alkaloids that would be toxic to most known life forms. And they do all of this while exhibiting signs of pleasure and satisfaction. The implications hit the Research Council like a shockwave. Dr. Quinville began, rapidly compiling data, his thoughts racing through quantum processors as he formulated a horrifying conclusion. I must publish an emergency communication to the Galactic Research Network, he announced. If this behavior is typical of human civilization, we may be dealing with the first documented case of species-wide psychological collapse, leading to ritualized self-termination. Within minutes, Quinville's emergency thesis was broadcasting across subspace to research stations throughout the galaxy. The document titled Human Self-Destruction Rituals, Evidence of Species-Wide Psychological Collapse included detailed analysis of what the Vorthax interpreted as systematic cellular destruction, chemical warfare preparation, and the consumption of toxic compounds. Back in her kitchen, completely unaware that she'd just been classified as a potential threat to galactic stability, Minji poured herself a cup of coffee and took that first perfect sip. The rich, warm flavor made her smile as she stirred her kimchi fried rice one more time. Perfect, she said to herself, not knowing that her simple expression of satisfaction had just triggered emergency protocols on 17 different worlds. The Vorthak researchers watched in fascinated horror as she appeared to enjoy consuming what they considered a deadly cocktail of destroyed proteins and plant toxins. To them, Minji looked like someone who had completely lost touch with basic survival instincts. They had no idea she was just making breakfast. Minji plated her kimchi, fried rice, the vibrant red and orange colors looking absolutely perfect against the white ceramic. She cracked a fresh egg on top, watching the yolk run golden over the spiced rice like liquid sunshine. A cup of steaming coffee sat beside her plate, filling the kitchen with that rich aroma that made mornings worth living. She had no idea that, in the station's main observation deck, every single Vorthak researcher had abandoned their duties to watch what they believed might be the final moments of human civilization. All personnel, priority observation protocol is now in effect, Commander Velthor announced through the station's communication system. The human subject is about to commence the consumption phase of her destruction ritual. In the monitoring room, dozens of crystalline beings pressed against the viewing panels, their forms pulsing with nervous energy. Dr. Hyuntar had 3 different toxicity calculators running simultaneously, trying to predict exactly how long Minji would remain conscious after ingesting what their instruments classified as a lethal cocktail of damaged proteins and plant-based toxins. Minji took her first bite. The kimchi fried rice was perfect, tangy from the fermentation, slightly, sweet from the caramelized edges with just enough heat to warm her from the inside out. She closed her eyes and smiled, that unconscious expression of pure satisfaction that happens when comfort food hits just right. In the observation room, 3 junior researchers immediately lost cohesion, their crystalline forms flickering and destabilizing in what was essentially the Vorthak equivalent of fainting. Dr. Yunsei began broadcasting emergency calculations to anyone who would listen. She's consuming approximately 47 different thermally altered chemical compounds, he reported in panic. The fermented matter alone contains levels of organic acids that should cause immediate cellular damage. How is she not experiencing systemic breakdown? Minji took another bite, mixing the runny egg yolk with the rice. The combination was heavenly, creamy richness balancing the spicy tang of kimchi. She made a little sound of contentment, something between a hum and a sigh. That meant breakfast was going exactly as planned. Did you hear that vocalization? Dr. Bayron's voice cracked with disbelief. She's expressing pleasure? How is neurological function still intact after consuming that concentration of decomposed organic matter? Commander Velthor's form dimmed with confusion. In all his centuries of studying different life forms, he'd never encountered anything like this. Most species showed immediate distress when consuming damaged or altered food sources. Humans seemed to prefer it that way. Then, Minji reached for her coffee. The assembled researchers held their equivalent of breath as she lifted the cup to her lips. Through their instruments, they could see the complex alkaloid compounds swirling in the dark liquid: caffeine, chlorogenic acids, quinides, and dozens of other chemicals that their databases flagged as potentially harmful to biological systems. She took a long, appreciative sip. "Oh, that's good coffee," she said to herself, completely unaware that she'd just caused a philosophical crisis among some of the galaxy's greatest minds. Dr. Quinville began frantically updating his emergency thesis. Subjects exhibits positive neurological response to alkaloid consumption. This contradicts every known principle of biological self-preservation. The human appears to be experiencing euphoria while ingesting concentrated plant toxins. Minji continued eating, occasionally pausing to take another sip of coffee or to savor a particularly good bite of rice. She was thinking about her grandmother's recipe, wondering if she'd gotten the seasoning balance right, mentally planning what she might cook for dinner. The Vorthaks were thinking about existential horror. "The implications are staggering, Dr. Hyuntel broadcast to the emergency council session that had spontaneously formed in the station's main conference chamber. "If this behavior is representative of human civilization, we're dealing with a species that has not only lost basic survival instincts, but has somehow evolved to derive pleasure from self-destructive behaviors." Lead scientist Mordan was compiling what he considered the most important scientific document in galactic history. "We must classify this as a xenobiological emergency of the highest order. The human subject continues to consume thermally damaged organic compounds while exhibiting signs of satisfaction and neurological stability. This challenges our fundamental understanding of intelligent life." Back in her kitchen, Minji scraped the last bit of rice from her plate and leaned back in her chair with a satisfied sigh. The breakfast had been exactly what she needed. Familiar flavors that made this strange alien station feel a little more like home. "That was perfect," she said aloud, not knowing that her simple statement of contentment had just prompted the Vorthak High Council to draft emergency containment protocols. Within the hour, galactic emergency broadcasts were being transmitted to research stations across 12 star systems. The message was stark and terrifying. Humanity had been discovered, and they appeared to be suffering from the most advanced form of species-wide psychological deterioration ever documented. As Minji washed her dishes and hummed quietly to herself, xenobiologists throughout the galaxy began developing theories about how an apparently intelligent species could evolve such destructive eating habits and still manage to achieve interstellar communication. None of them considered the possibility that humans might actually know what they were doing. After 3 hours of emergency meetings and increasingly panicked scientific reports, Commander Velthor finally decided to take direct action. Someone had to talk to the human before she completed what appeared to be an elaborate suicide ritual. He materialized outside Minji's quarters, his crystalline form flickering with nervous energy. Minji was washing dishes when the doorbell chimed, humming an old K-pop song and feeling pretty good about her morning. She opened the door to find Velthor standing there, looking as worried as a crystal alien could possibly look. "Dr. Park," he began carefully, "we need to discuss your termination ritual." "My what now?" Minji blinked at him, dish towel still in her hands. "The destructive consumption ceremony you performed this morning. Our entire research staff is deeply concerned about your psychological well-being." Velthor's voice carried that tone people use when they're trying to talk someone off a ledge. "We understand that some species develop self-destructive behaviors when faced with isolation, but we want you to know that help is available." Minji stared at him for a long moment, then burst out laughing. "Oh my God, you thought I was trying to kill myself? With breakfast? You deliberately consumed thermally damaged organic matter and concentrated plant toxins," Velthor replied, genuinely confused by her reaction. Our instruments detected over 200 different chemical compounds that do not exist in nature. How are you still alive? Because that's how cooking works, Minji said, wiping tears from her eyes. Come on, let me show you something, she led him back to the kitchen, where the lingering aroma of kimchi and coffee still hung in the air. Velthor's sensors were probably going crazy, but he followed her anyway. Okay, cooking lesson time, Minji said, pulling out a fresh egg. See this? Raw egg can contain harmful bacteria like salmonella, but when I heat it up, she cracked it into the pan and watched it sizzle. The heat kills the dangerous microorganisms while transforming the proteins into something more digestible and nutritious. Velthor's form brightened with interest. You're using thermal energy as a biological safety protocol? Exactly. Humans figured this out thousands of years ago. Fire made food safer to eat, which helped our brains grow bigger, which made us smarter. Minji flipped the egg expertly. But we didn't stop there. We discovered that controlled heat creates new flavors and textures. She pulled out a jar of kimchi and opened it. This is fermented cabbage. Those dangerous compounds your sensors detected? They're created by beneficial bacteria that preserve the food and add nutrition. The fermentation process creates vitamins that weren't there before. Velthor moved closer, his scientific curiosity overriding his concern. The bacteria are helpful? Some bacteria are our best friends. They help us digest food, create vitamins, preserve ingredients. Minji took a bite of kimchi straight from the jar. This tangy, spicy flavor, it's created by living microorganisms working together in perfect harmony. Fascinating, Velthor whispered. And the thermal destruction of the rice? That's called the Maillard reaction, Minji said, heating oil in a fresh pan. When proteins and sugars get heated together, they create hundreds of new flavor compounds. It's pure chemistry, but chemistry that makes food taste amazing. She demonstrated by adding rice to the hot oil, letting it sizzle and brown slightly. The familiar nutty aroma filled the kitchen. You see? I'm not destroying the rice, I'm transforming it, making it more complex, more flavorful, more interesting. She looked at Velthor's fascinated expression. And that coffee you were so worried about? The brewing process extracts the flavors we want while leaving behind the bitter compounds we don't. For several minutes, Velthor said nothing. His crystalline form cycled through different colors as he processed this information. Finally, he spoke. Dr. Park, are you telling me that humans have developed a systematic method of transforming basic organic matter into more complex, safer, and more pleasurable forms of sustenance? We call it cooking, Minji said with a grin. Some people spend their whole lives perfecting it. It's art, science, culture, and survival all rolled into one. This is... Velthor's voice carried a tone of awe. This is the most sophisticated integration of chemistry, biology, and aesthetics we have ever encountered. Within hours, Velthor's report had spread throughout the Galactic Research Network, but this time the tone was completely different. Instead of emergency warnings about human self-destruction, the message spoke of humanity's incredible ability to transform necessity into art. By the end of the week, Minji found herself giving cooking demonstrations to delegations from 12 different worlds. The Zephyrians were fascinated by bread fermentation. The Cathari wanted to understand spice combinations. The Morphic Collective couldn't believe humans had figured out how to make nutritious food taste good. I never thought I'd become a celebrity. Chef in space, Minji told Commander Velthor as they watched a group of crystalline researchers taking detailed notes on her kimchi-making process. You have revolutionized our understanding of biological intelligence, Velthor replied. We thought consumption was simply about energy acquisition. You have shown us it can be creativity, culture, chemistry, and community all at once. Minji smiled as she watched aliens from across the galaxy, learning to appreciate the simple magic of a home-cooked meal. Sometimes the most profound discoveries came from the most ordinary moments. Who knew that scrambled eggs could change the universe?